Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Happy Week 15. Today, we are coming to you from Chicago. We are here in Soldier Field, where in just a little bit, the Philadelphia Eagles, the 12-1 Philadelphia Eagles, will take on the Chicago Bears. I'm Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Josh Tolentino, and today I'm joined by a special guest, our Inquirer columnist and best-selling author, Mike Sielski. Mike, how is it going? How are you enjoying Chicago?
Chicago is great, Josh. I have to say you have a very low standard for special guest. Just letting the viewers know that right off the top.
I got to let everyone know when we've got a special guest joining the show. Mike, give me one favorite thing that you've done so far in Chicago. Staying warm counts for sure.
Staying warm counts. Honestly, just getting to the hotel last night was an achievement in and of itself. I flew in last night, and traffic from O'Hare Airport to my hotel was so bad. It took what should have been a 20-minute ride and turned it into more than an hour. So I considered it an achievement just to walk in the front doors of the hotel and get to my room. So, you settle for little victories in situations like that, Josh.
We'll take the little victories, and here we are again in the press box at Soldier Field, excuse me. As we discussed, it is cold here. Real field temperatures, that wind chill is going to drop into the single digits expected according to the forecast. So it's going to be a chilly one today here in the Windy City. Before we get started, though, I want to remind everyone throughout the season and especially throughout the game, you can continue the conversation with us over at our Game Day Central homepage. You can find us at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. Again, that is the place to continue the conversation for us and also to find all of our coverage over there at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. All right, Mike, let's get into it. It's a jam-packed show. We're in the Windy City. It's week 15. There are 4 games left. I think we've got to start with the man under center, Jalen Hurts. He's become the front runner there in that MVP race, fighting alongside Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. But Jalen Hurts has certainly made his case. I think he's up to 32 total touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. What is your take here? What's your temperature here on the Jalen Hurts race for MVP?
Well, I think you're right. I think he's the front runner. I think he's going to have to overcome the fact that the candidates that you mentioned, guys like Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, are to varying degrees more established than he is. I think there's more trust around the league and in the people who vote on such awards as the most valuable player that, okay, well, we know how good Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are. And Jalen Hurts kind of came out of nowhere. And he's got a great offensive line. And he's got great receivers. And he has all these conditions in place that are allowing him to thrive. And I think the case to be made for Hurts is that you can argue he's the product of the Eagles system, quote unquote, but the fact is he's the system. The entire way that they play offense is predicated on the particular set of skills that he has, his ability to run, the improvements he's made as a passer, the intelligence with which he plays. You mentioned the 3 interceptions, and I keep coming back to this one line that I used after the Eagles beat the Arizona Cardinals earlier this season, where Kyler Murray of the Cardinals made a couple of not so smart plays in the closing moments of that game, and it cost the Cardinals a chance to win the game. The one thing that Jalen Hurts doesn't do is he doesn't do dumb stuff. And in the NFL, that's half the battle when you're a quarterback. You can make no-look passes like Patrick Mahomes, and you can throw the ball through a brick wall like Josh Allen, and that's great, and they are great players. But Hurts, there hasn't been a play all season that I can remember where I said to myself, oh, Jalen, don't do that. That's not smart. Oh, that's careless. Oh, that's reckless. He has played so soundly all season that I think that's a feather in his cap that unless you're watching every snap of every game that he plays this season, you might miss it.
Yeah, it's been such a hot topic. It's only going to, this oven is only going to get hotter here over the last month of the regular season. But you bring up such a great point, Mike. Ball security. And Nick Sirianni, he'll be the first to tell you. He tells us all the time. They preach it every morning in that auditorium when they have their morning meetings. They've got big signs that essentially preach and re-emphasize the message of ball security. 3 turnovers there, 3 interceptions for Jalen Hurts. and it's kind of rubbed off on the rest of the team. You see Miles Sanders having the best year of his career. He eclipsed 1,000 yards last week, zero fumbles so far on the season. So a great point there, Mike, on Jalen Hurts in regards to he's taking care of the football. That's certainly going to help his case here as he chases that top award in the NFL. Um, Transitioning over to the Eagles, though, and the team as a whole, Mike, they're 12-1. I don't think many of us imagined this. We knew that they were going to be a bit better, just considering the free agency and offseason additions that Howie Roseman added to the team. AJ Brown, obviously highlighting that class, but 12-1 here, 4 games left. They've got a realistic chance here to host a couple playoff games there at Lincoln Financial Field. As they, that one seed, it's so key now in today's NFL. It secures them that bye and also home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, they're in the driver's seat in the conference. They're 2 games better right now than anybody else. It's still possible, obviously, that the Dallas Cowboys could catch them if the Eagles happen to lose today to the Bears, and if they lose in Arlington to the Cowboys on Christmas Eve, then things get really dicey. But there's no indication yet that they're going to stumble that way. They had their worst game of the season a couple of weeks ago against Washington, made a few mistakes that prevented them from winning that game. But realistically speaking, if you remember, they had victory in their hands. They had Jalen Hurts throwing a deep pass to Quez Watkins, and
Hmm.
Watkins breaking away, and he gets hit from behind and fumbles. And if that doesn't happen, he's on his way to scoring the go-ahead touchdown. So, I wrote this in a column over the weekend, Josh. It's not just that the Eagles are 12-1; it's that they've been so coldly efficient and almost boring about how they're going about this. It's not as if they have Terrell Owens doing sit-ups in the driveway and picking fights with Donovan McNabb, and there have been no injuries really that they've had to overcome, with the exception maybe of Dallas Goedert and Avonte Maddox, and both of those guys either have come back or will come back. It's not as if this is a repeat of 2017 when they lost Carson Wentz in Week 14, and the prospective MVP was gone for the rest of the year. The season has been kind of boring because they've been so good, and this is something that Philadelphia sports fans, and I think Eagles fans in particular, might have a hard time kind of dealing with, because the entire ethos and mentality of the market is to constantly look to the sky for the anvil that's going to fall on your heads. When does the thing go wrong? And nothing really has gone wrong yet for this team. So if you're an Eagles fan, if you're an Eagles player or coach, you have to feel very good about where you are right now. There's been no let up, just very professional week after week after week. The leadership in the locker room is very good. It would be surprising to me if the Eagles didn't get to the Super Bowl. I thought of them as a team that could get there for the longest time this season, for all the reasons that you said, the additions, the changes. But these last couple of weeks, with the way they dismantled the Tennessee Titans and dismantled the Giants, it showed to me, I think, that they're a level even beyond what anyone who kind of had the wildest expectations for them might have thought.
Yeah, and seemingly each week we discuss, deficiencies or spots where they can improve. It felt like for the longest time, for the first chunk of the season, Mike, we were really analyzing that run defense and the struggles to contain not just running quarterbacks, but all pro type rushers. We see what they've done over the past month with Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, guys like Aaron Jones. They've quieted and addressed that issue. So we'll see how they fare here over this last month of the regular season. But they've definitely got a great shot at seizing that 1 seed, which would again secure them a bye week, first week of the playoffs, and also home field advantage there at Lincoln Financial Field. That can be so crucial there in those January to February games. Last topic here on what's the latest, Mike. Nick Sirianni, Matt Eberflus, a lot of familiarity between these two head coaches. They were both under Frank Reich in Indianapolis. A guy that is people in Philadelphia are very familiar with. Nick Sirianni there was the OC. Matt Eberflus, the DC, and just a lot of familiarity again between these two coaching staffs. I kind of am pretty interested in how this one plays out. The opening script, see what Nick Sirianni wants to take advantage of. We analyze these rosters. It's such a clear advantage here for the Eagles, but just knowing that familiarity again between the two coaching staffs can kind of throw wrinkles here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only the similarities between their coaching staffs, Josh, but the similarities in the way they want to play offense. The Bears, if you look at how they want to move the ball and have moved the ball this season, they're not a pass first team in any regard. They're one of the they have the worst passing offense in the NFL. But Justin Fields can really run, and he's developing. He doesn't have the weapons around him that Jalen Hurts does, but they're kind of facsimiles of each other. The Bears kind of aspiring to be, from a style standpoint and a substance standpoint, what the Eagles have become this season with Hurts at quarterback. And from a bigger picture perspective too, when you talk about coaches that are coming from the same tree, so to speak, in this case, the Frank Reich tree, that always interests me. We've seen this in the past where longtime, very successful coaches, guys like Bill Belichick or Andy Reid, or before that, Mike Holmgren or Mike Shanahan, have these coaching trees, guys who worked for them and go on to become head coaches themselves. And I'm always curious to see how those understudies fare when they get their own shot. We've seen situations in the past where Andy Reid, for instance, has had a terrific coaching tree. He's produced John Harbaugh and I'm trying to think of some other names. Brad Childress, who got the Vikings to the playoffs years ago, and any number of coaches who have been really successful. And then you get Bill Belichick, whose tree hasn't been as successful. Charlie Weiss didn't succeed at Notre Dame, and Romeo Crennel's had a couple of chances to be a head coach and didn't do well. And Matt Patricia in Detroit was a flop, and Joe Judge was a flop with the Giants. So it's interesting to me to see how all this shakes out. So far, Sirianni certainly has the edge here in this matchup today, and in the start to his head coaching career that he's gotten off to. And I just think it's something worth watching over the next couple of years if you're really into that kind of thing and following the NFL that closely.
We'll see how that familiarity benefits or affects this game again between Nick Sirianni, Matt Eberflus. There you go, Mike, diving into that Frank Reich coaching tree as we label it. Mike, let's transition over to who's hurt, who's healthy. It's a big talking point this week, and I'll be honest with you, Mike. I thought Dallas Goedert was going to be back playing in this game, but you look at the opposition, you look at the advantages they still have across the board. The move kind of makes sense. He is eligible to return today. He was not elevated again from injured reserve. Weeks ago, Dallas Goedert, again, he sustained a shoulder injury, got a tiny chip type fracture, as he described, as a Commanders defender fell fully on top of him. He's missed the past 4 games, but when he went on injured reserve, he kind of hinted that he didn't even want to be on IR. He threw that kind of comment at Howie. You didn't have to put me on IR, because he felt like he was going to make a quick recovery. But with him sitting today, he gets another week here as that big matchup down in Dallas on Christmas Eve looms.
Yeah, and look, they haven't really missed a beat without him, right? I mean, that was a tough injury in the moment in that loss to Washington. It was a play that turned the game where there should have been a face mask penalty on that play, and not only did the Eagles not get the call, but they lost Goddard for several weeks thereafter. But again, they haven't missed him much in the last couple of weeks. They put it on the Titans and the Giants without Goddard there, and it speaks to the offensive depth and skill that this team has. And I think it's smart for them to leave Goddard out this week, as you said. It sounds crazy to say and almost a little arrogant, but they don't need him today. Not against this Bears team. They're going to need him next week against the Cowboys. That's the game that could make or break both of those teams' seasons. So smart play, I think, by the Eagles here to give Goddard another week of rest, get him as close to full strength and full health as you can, and then unleash him, on Christmas Eve against the Cowboys.
And you said it. I mean, this team hasn't missed a beat without him. There've been more targets to spread around for A.J. Brown, who's eclipsed 1,000 yards. Devontae Smith is nearing 800. And not just that, obviously more opportunities for that specific position there. Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, Tyree Jackson sharing the load in regards to Dallas Goedert being out. Again, a bit surprising that he's not back in the lineup, but he gets another week to get healthy, get right for the Dallas Cowboys game on Christmas Eve. Elsewhere, Mike, I mean, this team is pretty healthy. I mean, you look at the secondary, that's certainly an area to look at. With safety Reed Blankenship, he's got a knee injury. He did not practice this week. He is out. A bit thin there with C.J. Gardner-Johnson still on IR. He's eligible to return January 1st when the team hosts the New Orleans Saints there at the Link. They brought in back Anthony Harris onto the practice squad. So a position there. We discuss kind of weaknesses or deficiencies. Safety is certainly one of them. Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace are the only healthy safeties ready for today's game. Just Scott is also able to go back there if needed.
Yeah, you have a hard time looking for soft targets on this team and on this defense with the way that they've played all season. But safety is probably one of them. Uh, the the benefit though is that they have two of the best cornerbacks and maybe the best cornerback
Yep.
tandem in the NFL, and Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So it's not as if they can't handle being a little bit weaker at that position. And the fact that you can bring Anthony Harris back, somebody who was here with the team last year, familiar with Jonathan Gannon's system, is it the greatest safety in the world? No, of course not. But at this stage of the season, you're not going to find somebody who's the greatest safety in the world. Ronnie Lott isn't out there, or Brian Dawkins isn't out there. So you plug Harris in there on the practice squad. He can step in a pinch if you need him to. And as you said, Josh, they're going to get these guys back. They're going to get C.J. Gardner-Johnson back in time for the playoffs, and that's really what this is about. These injuries that the Eagles have suffered, knock on wood for them, so far have not been serious enough or severe enough that
Mhm.
they would be really shorthanded and really damaged heading into the postseason.
And certainly one last one to touch on, kind of a forgotten position. You think about the average fan in the NFL. They're so attracted to quarterback play, wide receivers, the playmakers. Punter Aaron Siposs. It was a big, big week here for the Eagles. Unfortunately for the Eagles, he got hurt in last week's game. It was such a crazy sequence, Mike. I mean, we all watched it together last week in Philadelphia, but a block punt there in their own end zone. Siposs picks it up with one hand and he tries to advance it, almost reaches that first down marker, goes down pretty hard. He is out for he's going to be out for a few weeks. The team put him on IR, and in comes veteran Brett Kern, I believe a 14-year veteran, a couple All-Pro seasons there, Pro Bowl seasons with Tennessee. And speaking with him this week, he paid attention to the Titans. He paid attention to the Eagles, obviously, with them being one of the best teams in the league this year. He was pretty juiced to join the team. Um, if maybe like a younger punter or maybe a guy like Cameron Dicker earlier in the season with not much NFL experience, you might be worried. But Brett Kearns just seems kind of like a pro's pro here as the Eagles fill and play there at that punter position.
Yeah, look, Brett Kern is exactly the kind of player you want to sign in a situation like this. A guy who's been around a long time. He doesn't have to learn on the fly. He's got tons of experience. He is not going to be, even for a punter, like the adjustment period that he's going to go through is going to be so minimal. He knows how to do his job. Punter is one of those positions in the NFL where you can be 38 as Kern is, or at an advanced age in football, and still perform your job very, very well. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, Donnie Jones was their punter, and he was 36 years old, I think. I remember talking to him about that, about being the oldest or one of the oldest guys in the locker room, and how did he relate to the other players. And those special teams positions are so unique and so specialized anyway that Brett Kern's going to come in. He's going to do his job. I would be very surprised if he didn't perform very well in Siposs's absence. And the good part about that sequence that you described, Josh, is that once Siposs gets back, now we know that if Miles Sanders gets hurt or Kenny Gainwell gets hurt, they can put Aaron Siposs in a tailback, and he can carry the ball as well as any of those guys.
You kind of mentioned these backup, very special cases. You want to throw Siposs there at tailback. How about Braden Covey last week there at holder? Shout out to E.J. Smith. He did that big feature on Braden Covey earlier in the year. Who knew that he was the backup holder and did quite a nice job? But he doesn't have to worry about that anymore, as Michael Clay and Nick Sirianni said, as the team brings in Brett Kern. Mike, let's transition over to me and EJ's favorite segment. It is called What You Said. Just a reminder to everyone viewing back home throughout the game, throughout the week, go ahead and submit those comments and questions on our Game Day Central homepage, inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. Next week, we will be in Dallas on Christmas Eve. We'll have a chance to read your comments and questions again on the show. Mike, our first one comes from Wes Hopkins, who says, seems like an easy win, and there's no such thing in the NFL anymore. Staying healthy is key from here to mid-January. Mike, I want to focus on Wes's the second part of his comment. Staying healthy is key from here to mid-January. that's where it is right there. We kind of spoke to players and the drama of going to MetLife Stadium last week, and they say the turf there is one of the worst in the NFL, one of the worst playing surfaces. And the Eagles had one victim fall to that, Reed Blankenship, who we discussed earlier in the show. Uh, really, I mean, their goal is to get that one seed, to get that bye week, and to have home field advantage. But really, again, over these last 4 weeks, they want to try to stay as healthy as possible.
Yeah, and this is going to lead to a discussion that's familiar, Josh, to anybody who's been around the Eagles in the last 15 to 20 years. It's a discussion that we used to have annually back in the early 2000s when Andy Reid was coaching and Donovan McNabb was the quarterback, and the team would get to the NFC Championship game, 4 years in a row, particularly in 2004 when they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. And so the discussion we had around here in 2017 when the team made it to the Super Bowl and it clinched the number one seed. And it's the whole rest versus rust debate. How long do you play your starters? Do you need to keep them sharp? Do you need to give them rest? How do you weigh the risk of one of them getting injured? Things like that. And I have to be honest, over time, I've come around to the idea of rest over rust. I've seen it work often enough, both in 2004 and in 2017. The Eagles rested starters in the last couple games of the season, and it didn't really affect them come the postseason. And I think now, in this era of football, when the regular season is 17 games, it is so long now that it is vital to get your starters some time away so that their bodies can heal a little bit. We had this discussion, if you remember, back during the preseason. How much is Nick Sirianni playing his regular players? And don't they have to play more during these actual preseason games? And can they really get the reps they need in practice and in film time and all of this stuff? Well, the Eagles came out of the chute looking pretty good with that kind of easier approach from Sirianni, and I think he'll go back to it again this time, and I think it's the right thing to do because these players need that time away to get fresh, and they can stay sharp in the film room, through walkthroughs, through practices, all the things that they did in the preseason and training camp, and still be ready to go come the divisional round or the NFC Championship game.
Mike, you bring up such a great point. We look at the past 2 weeks, fourth quarter, it's been Gardner Minshew time. I mean, this Eagles team, to their credit, they've jumped out to multi-possession leads in the second half, and Jalen Hurts hasn't needed to do much, along with a handful of starters. Again, they've benefited from extra rest in the fourth quarter over the past 2 games. We'll see if the same scenario happens here today against the Bears. Health, a key priority, as Wes points out. Mike, our last comment here comes from 215 and 702, who says, in the best of all possible worlds, one of the top quarterbacks will still be available when the Eagles or the Saints pick comes up. Then they can trade down for even more loot. Mike, it's such a crazy situation here with these Eagles. They're 12-1. We're talking about the playoffs. They're probably the only team in the league who can discuss trying to get home field advantage and having a top 5 pick. I mean, that's right now where that Saints pick floats, right around that 5 area, top 5 pick again from the New Orleans Saints. As this commenter points out, I mean, there's going to have Howie Roseman's going to have a chance to work the phone lines if C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, one of those top quarterbacks, still available for these quarterback needy teams around NFL, and he could certainly, those top 5, top 10 picks can come with a big haul for the future.
I love Philadelphia Eagles fans, Josh. Here the team is 12-1, coasting toward the number 1 seed in the NFC, has a shot to go to the Super Bowl, and we're getting questions about next year's draft and what the Eagles could get. It's remarkable. And look, the conversation around this idea of how the Eagles would approach the 23 draft was really, really relevant at the start of the season before Jalen Hurts started playing as well as he had been playing, because nobody knew how he would perform. They knew that the surroundings and the conditions and the players around him would be better, but it was going to be on Hurts to prove that the Eagles shouldn't use a top 10 pick on the next quarterback, right? Like that was the thought, was that if Hurts didn't play well or proved he couldn't hack it as their starting quarterback, well, the Eagles had positioned themselves to draft his replacement. Well, you're not thinking in those terms now. You're thinking in terms, as the questioner says, of like, what kind of loot could you get for that pick if you wanted to trade down? Is there another player at another position who the Eagles could take with that high pick and address a potential weakness somewhere, get another pass rusher? Not that they don't, they lead the NFL in sacks as it is, but they could go any number of directions with that high pick. So the conversation in that regard around the idea of what the Eagles' future was going to look like and what sort of decisions they were going to make has really changed since opening day in Detroit.
Such a crazy scenario here for this team. You point out the 12-1 Philadelphia Eagles aiming for that #1 seed, trying to coast to the Super Bowl as we point it. But such a, again, so interesting with that top 5 pick right now from the Saints. Mike, let's transition over to our predictions, some players to watch out for. But first, let's go to some thoughts from Jeff McClain.
Hi, I'm Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks for joining me here at Game Day Central. And ahead of the Eagles game against the Chicago Bears, a game I think everyone expects them to win, but you can't overlook any team in the NFL, and the Bears have at least one weapon I think that can really give them trouble, and that's Justin Fields. If he can get going on the ground, then that can open up the pass, and then the Eagles may have some issues, and that could be enough maybe to give the Bears a chance against this Eagles team, which is really flying at this point in the season. But it's going to be a very hard task for Fields and for the Bears. They don't really have much else besides him. On offense, Khalil Herbert, their top running back, he's out. So the +1 that you have with Justin Fields isn't as strong. Now, David Montgomery's a solid running back, but he's not a slasher like Herbert. And I think the Eagles, like they did very much a couple weeks ago against the Titans and Derrick Henry, they'll probably load the box. They'll probably go with a lot of heavy 5-man fronts and trying to shut down that run and force Fields to throw. Now, he's gotten better as a thrower, but he doesn't have much in terms of receivers to throw to. And Chase Claypool, his top receiver, is now out. So huge advantage for, I think, the Eagles defense in this game if they can keep Fields in check. Now, we've seen over the last 3 of the last 4 games, he's had 50-plus runs. So if he does that, then the Bears have a chance. On the other side of the ball, the Eagles offense is just really steamrolling here right now. They've averaged more than 40 points in the last 3 games, and they've done it on the ground if they want to. They've done it on the air, in the air if they want to. Jalen Hurts, same thing. He's run for over 100 yards. He's thrown for over 350 yards a couple weeks ago against the Titans when the Titans decide to try and stop the run there. So the Eagles can really kind of go whichever way they want, depending upon how the Bears defense will play. This is not a good Bears defense. It ranks last in DVOA, Football Outsiders analytics. Not good against stopping the run, not good against stopping the pass. So the Eagles have so many weapons now. It's become very difficult for teams to stop them. Miles Sanders, obviously in the run game, he's over 1,000 yards. Receiver A.J. Brown, he's over 1,000 yards. Devontae Smith is starting to get hot. And then you add Dallas Goedert into the mix, who's been missing for the last 4 games. And you just don't know if you're the Bears where the Eagles will go with this offense. So, look, anything can happen on any given Sunday. Maybe the Eagles trap game or looking ahead to that showdown on Christmas Eve against the Cowboys for pretty much all the marbles. But I don't think this team is wired that way. They are locked in. They're a week-to-week kind of team in terms of how they approached this. They've approached the season so far and going 12-1. So I think they win pretty easily here. I think they're going to win 38-18. And then, of course, you'll have them looking ahead to the huge game in Dallas on December 24th. That's it here from me. And now back to you guys at Game Day Central.
Thanks to Jeff McClain again for his thoughts on today's game. Mike,
And
let's gather yours.
And a handsome man as well. He's quite a handsome man.
And there you have it. He tops off our predictions. Mike, give me one player to watch out for on offense and one player to watch out for on defense.
I think the player to watch on offense, and he's coming off of a terrific game, maybe his best game as a pro, is Miles Sanders. I think if they can get him going again in these conditions and this kind of, the frigid weather, if he's able to run the ball well, then the Eagles are going to have an even easier time of it than I think most of us expect them to.
And one on defense.
On defense too. I would say I would pinpoint 2. I would say the linebackers, Kazir White and T.J. Edwards. You want to keep Justin Fields contained as much as you can, and those 2 guys and their ability to do that to help the defensive ends kind of box Fields in if they can is going to be a key to stopping the Bears offense.
Yeah, we'll see if Jonathan Gannon deploys either of them. Maybe Kaiser White in that quarterback spy role with Justin Fields, looking to make some explosive plays here in Chicago. Might goes Miles Sanders and the linebacker duo of Kaiser White, TJ Edwards. Give me Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat. Both of them have been. They're both at career highs in sacks. I mean, both. Josh Sweat, 7.5. Hassan Reddick, excuse me, is at double digits there with 10. Uh, Again, you pointed out, Mike, that this team leads the NFL in sacks. They're playing at such a high level. Some of that is definitely due to coverage there with Darius Slay, James Bradbury playing such sticky coverage. But again, they've been chasing these quarterbacks. Offense, man, give me the Devontae Smith. He's he's next in line. We talk about AJ Brown, Miles Sanders reaching that 1,000 yard mark. Devontae's chasing that's he told me earlier or at the beginning of the season rather that is his goal here in year number 2. He wants to reach that 1,000 yard mark. He's getting close. He's got 4 games left. I believe right under 800. So a chance
Mhm.
here to chase that here before the season. Mike, our last part before we wrap up, give me a prediction for today's game.
Well, my prediction, Josh, is very close to our colleague, Mr. McLean's. I think the Eagles are going to have a pretty easy time of it today. I would be surprised if they didn't. This game to me resembles last week against the Giants, where you go in and you say, okay, where does the opponent have an advantage over the Eagles? And you really have to struggle to find an area where the Bears have an edge. So my final score prediction is Eagles 38, Bears 17. I'm not quite sure how Jeff got to 18 for the Bears. Maybe they go for 2. Maybe they miss an extra point or 2. Maybe they kick 6 field goals for all I know. But I'm going with 38-17, a little more conventional final score. How about you?
Mike, our predictions are nearly identical. I think I went in today's edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer, I think 35, 17 around that mark. 17's kind of been the sweet spot for the Eagles defense in regards to points allowed. I think over half of their games they've limited opposing offenses to 17 points or less. Justin Fields certainly capable of getting explosive plays off. We'll see. The Eagles defense has struggled at times to contain rushing quarterbacks in regards to scrambles, but playing lockdown defense elsewhere again against the Bears team that is missing several key playmakers. Mike, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
No, I'm just glad it's nice and warm and toasty in this press box, and I'm not looking to going outside and waiting for an Uber once we file our stories and columns and all that, because it's going to be freaking cold.
Yeah, as we pointed out, wind chill dipping into the single digits here in Chicago. We've got a beautiful backdrop as we take in this game here between the 12-1 Philadelphia Eagles and the Chicago Bears. All right, Mike, let's wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in to Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Make sure you stick around over at our Game Day Central homepage. You can find us at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. That's the place again. Continue the conversation with us. We've got myself, Mike Sielski, Jeff McClain, Devin Jackson, all here on site in Chicago, ready to cover this game between the 12-1 Philadelphia Eagles and the Chicago Bears. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Mike Sielski, I am Josh Tolentino. This is Game Day Central.